To the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, the final episode of week 6 here, closing it down with our closer, Rob Veno at Rob Veno Sports. Guys, we were going 381, 382, Oregon State, California, down through the end of the card in numerical order. Those little numbers next to the team name. If you go to Wager Talk Live odds screen, we're just going right down it with the closer. Like I said, happy birthday, the birthday boy, Rob Veno. Welcome on in, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. We got around the calendar one more time here, so it's a good day. Glad to be here to be able to talk these games with you. And as I mentioned to you off air, it's an interesting little deal on the road that I live on. Not many homes, 8 homes on the entire road, but 3 people with the same exact birthday. So when we get done, I'll watch college football out with them with a couple of beverages of our choice. It'll be a good time.
All right, a good Thursday night for Rob Veno coming in for his birthday. And I'll tell you guys, I feel good about this segment. You know, we get the birthday picks here. So I'm feeling a couple winners coming in, Robbie. You guys feel free to chime in on YouTube, in the live chat box here. Every Game on the Board, YouTube, on Twitter, at Rob Veno Sports, at Drew Martin Betts. And wherever you're downloading your podcasts at, guys, make sure to subscribe. Every Game on the Board. We got 99 in the house saying Robbie's thoughts on tonight's action. Yeah, we'll hit it throughout the podcast, guys, but want to start off with the first game of the segment, 381, 382, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. local Pacific. Cal hosting Oregon State. Rob, we're seeing the Beavers -9 in the hook as the road favorite, 51.5 being the total. Interesting one in Berkeley. Beavers laying near double digits at Cal. You liking anything?
It's an interesting contrast here, Drew. We got Cal, which, as we talked about in week 1 with Jake Spavital being the offensive coordinator, the sort of tempo game has come back to Berkeley, and they performed pretty well offensively this year. They go quick. They run a lot of plays. They are able to move the football through the air at times as well as on the ground. So you contrast that with Oregon State, which really wants to pound the football, run it right at you with their big offensive line. And I'm not sure, to tell you the truth, that California is as good a defensive team as they've been in the past. Generally, Justin Wilcox's teams will be known for their defense, but it doesn't seem to be the way this year. They gave up 362 passing yards last week to Arizona State, a team that was basically dormant offensively, and they were able to pick up 430 total. I don't know that Cal can hold up at the line of scrimmage, but all that being said, yes, Oregon State has an extra day to prepare because it was last Friday night, but that win over Utah was huge for the Beavers. And you have to wonder if they're still a program that kind of sits on cloud 9 when they have a big win like that, or if they progressed far enough under Jonathan Smith where it's like been there, done that. Next up, I don't know how to take Oregon State off of a big win. If I had to, I might look to take points, but I didn't play here. I think Cal is always dangerous as a dog of this size just because they're able to score this season. But again, I do question their defense a little bit at the point of attack. And if I knew Oregon State was going to be fully focused, I might think differently. But I'm just not sure how they'll react off of the big win.
I'm with you, right? It's a tricky one right at the top here, guys. And I was watching an interview with Jonathan Smith about like Oregon State and their future and how he's recruiting there because they don't really have a conference. And he was like, well, I don't know if there's going to be a big drop off because currently right now they have no 4 or 5 star recruits on the roster. I thought that was amazing. Did you know that?
I didn't know that he doesn't have any, but I know how difficult it must be in that conference because a lot of those other schools recruit the heck out of California, including Oregon and Washington. And
right.
Oregon's not necessarily known as a big high school talent state where football is concerned. So it's kind of limited there. I don't know what their recruiting base will be. It's kind of always been everybody else's leftovers and then coach them up. And let's give him credit. He's done a great job coaching that crew up the last 3 years or so to put them in the position where they're at right now, where they're dangerous every single week. And, you know, we talked last week about potential head coaches for Michigan State. I had mentioned his name. I think that guy at a bigger program with a bigger recruiting base would be an excellent head coach. So we'll see how they do here this week. I'll be interested to see what the result is this week.
Oh yeah, the question about Michigan State head coaches, that was a good one from last week, guys. Feel free to chime in the comments below. Any questions, what you're looking to bet, all is welcome, guys. We got Texas Tech and Baylor up next. Man, Baylor, what a game last week. They get their quarterback back as well, and the Red Raiders now laying 1.5 as the short road favorite here. Robbie, 60.5 being the total. We get Texas Tech at Baylor. You liking anything in Waco on Saturday?
Yeah, so you and I were part of Wager Talks College Football Today midweek, and we had this game, or at least I brought this game to the table. So you've heard a lot of what I'm going to say, but for the viewers here that are going to watch this segment, I kind of like the over. It's really been bet up 57 all the way to 60.5, almost 4 points. I think rightfully so. And the one thing, Drew, that I said when we were on together, and I'll say it again, is I can't get that quote from Steve Sarkisian out of my head. They played Baylor 2 weeks ago, 2 Saturdays ago. And after that game, he said it was easier to score on Baylor than it is to score on their own scout team, which is crazy. And so if you're a head coach, you don't want to go out and just make remarks to make remarks. I get that they're leaving the Big 12 and they'll probably never have to see Baylor again. But you just don't do that to teams unless you. Sarkisian's not that kind of guy, I don't think. I think he really meant it. So I went to the rack with Baylor Central Florida over 56 last week in Blake Shapen's first game back. And sure enough, that game produced 71 points. I think the same might happen here again. Baylor's defense has been torched the last couple of weeks. And just to kind of condense some of my thoughts here, I'll say this. The 3 teams that Baylor has faced with any offensive capability, Texas State in week 1, where Texas State shocked them and scored 42 points against them. Then Texas drilled them with their offense. And then last week, UCF. I know UCF blew a big lead, but they had 469 yards and 35 points, and they did it whichever way they wanted to. 235 on the ground, 234 through the air. So, they did collapse. But the point here is I think Texas Tech is going to be able to score points. They have shown this year that they're more than capable of scoring, but their defense too, Drew, is not necessarily rock solid. And I think Blake Shapen, if you just go back to him for a minute, the 3 games that he's quarterback, they've been really, really good offensively. So it was a big drop off when he wasn't in. I think Texas Tech's a little bit run heavy, which is a surprise out of that particular program. But since the head coaching changed, they have developed a running game, Taj Brooks and company. They run it for 177.5 yards per game, which is a lot. They pass it for even more. Even without their starting quarterback, I don't think this is that hard to get over. You're asking me, can this game get to 34-27, 34-28, both of those cash tickets? I think it could get even higher. So I'm going to go ahead and play this game up and over 60.5. The tempo's going to be there. Absolutely, for sure. Texas Tech is number 2 in the nation in seconds per play, 20.8 seconds per play. And believe it or not, Baylor, they're pretty fast too, number 44 in offensive tempo as far as seconds per play is concerned. And if you just look at the 2 where Blake Shapen has started, they're averaging 76.5 per game. Total plays per game. So I think you'll get tempo. I think you'll get yardage. I think you'll get points. I'll play over 60.5.
Get up and over 60.5. There is a 60 out there offshore here, guys. So Texas Tech, Baylor towards the over. Great reasoning why here with @Rob Sports on Twitter, making our way down every game on the board. We got section 1, section 2, section 3 already booked and up wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Every game on the board as we head to the Sun Belt. Up next, Arkansas State and Troy, 4:00 Eastern here, Rob. 52 being the total. -16. That's the Troy Trojans as the home favorite.
Yeah, and how about Arkansas State, Drew? I mean, the last couple of weeks, quarterback change to Raynor, and all of a sudden, that offense is humming on all cylinders. Now, the defenses haven't been great, but Jalen Raynor has put together some numbers for this squad. It was a good switch at quarterback by Butch Jones so far. And again, they're going to have to face a Troy defense this week that's a little different, obviously, than playing UMass and scoring 52 last week. But they came out of the gates fired up and scored immediately. I think that game was 14-0 before you could blink. and it just increased from there. They're going to have issues on defense. They've had them all season long. And Troy's a funny team, Drew. This is a team where, I don't know, you watch a lot of Sunbelt, so I'll ask your opinion too. But to me, Troy's a lot of 20 to 20 yardage without points. It's like, yeah, they move the ball up and down the field, but then when it comes to scoring points, they just don't do a heck of a lot of that. Their defense is good enough, especially where Sunbelt competition is concerned, to get them victories. But I just don't know. We'll see this week. If they can't rack up 38, 40 points against Arkansas State, that would be kind of disappointing because they can run the football. Troy can. They can throw it pretty well. They just seem to make, I don't know how to describe this. It's like they can drive for 3 first downs and then come up on a 3rd and 4 and just have an inaccurate pass or a drop pass or something that stalls drives. I don't trust them as big favorites. I would much rather trust total here, thinking that Butch Jones's new quarterback here, Jalen Raynor, dual threat that he is, there's not a ton of game film on him. And it probably poses a little bit of preparation difficulty for Troy State, enough to get Arkansas State enough points to push this thing over. You're always going to get a lower total where Troy is concerned, especially when they're favored. The total will always be tipped in their favor, perceived as a defensive team that wants to just run out the clock with their running game. I think this total is way too low for the way Arkansas State is playing offensively right now and for as lousy as Arkansas State's defense is right now. So I think you might want to take a look at over with Arkansas State, and maybe for the foreseeable future, Drew, because this quarterback switch has really produced something offensively. We'll see how much, because this is a different style defense. Like I say, different type defense, different animal. But I got faith that they can get themselves to 20 points against this team.
Rob, I mean, you bring up Troy and my thoughts on it. I had Troy's marked pretty good. I actually lost betting Georgia State against Troy last week, and that's something I took away because I think Georgia State's very good,
right?
And Troy beat them, and it wasn't a fluke. But even more so, I think you're onto something with this Arkansas State and the quarterback switch. I mean, it's like night and day when you look at their offensive statistics. I mean, they scored 0 points the first game. They scored 3 points the second game. Then they make the switch at some point. I didn't watch the game against an FCS school. They score 31 points in that game, then 44 against Southern Miss and 52 against Massachusetts. I mean, you talked about it. The strength of schedule needs to be kind of brought into this, but still, that offense is moving. That makes me look towards the over. Only problem is Troy's probably the best defense they will have faced, maybe outside of like Oklahoma, maybe Memphis, but I would still think Troy is really good. That's the only thing that would make me pump the brakes, Rob.
Yeah, that's certainly the concern here. Now, the good side to that is that odds makers give us a number that's really that you can work with if you're going to play over. The number's so low here. I think what I see 51 or 52. And
yeah,
if Troy, Troy again, Drew, they pile up 410 yards against, and you're right, Georgia State's a really good team. Georgia State does not allow teams to run on them. Troy didn't necessarily run on them. 4.5 a carry is good enough, but they get 410 yards and 28 points. And to me, their yardage and points never, ever correlate. This week, they should. And Troy should be able to take on that Arkansas State defense, and get to 38 points. I'd be disappointed if they can't. And if they get that many, it's not going to take a heck of a lot, but a couple of touchdowns out of Arkansas State to get this thing over the numbers. So I think that maybe we're just betting against numbers here along with the matchup, thinking that Troy is just positioned too low here by the odds makers.
Staying in the Sun Belt up next, South Alabama, Louisiana Monroe, -10. That's what I'm seeing, the Jaguars as the road favorite, 51 being the total. As we get 7 o'clock Eastern here, Rob, USA versus ULM.
All right, so I'm going to make this one brief because I am at a crossroads with both of these teams. I just don't know what to expect week to week. South Alabama, after they beat Oklahoma State, and I get there's some troubles at Oklahoma State that exist off the field, but they go there and they beat that team 33-7. And you think South Alabama actually coming into the season was touted really, really high in this conference, right? I think week 1 they played Tulane, and there was a boatload of South Alabama money, not Tulane money. But they get beat by 20 in that game. Then, like I said, they come back, they win their next game against FCS, they blow out Oklahoma State. They're huge favorites. They're getting bit like crazy against Central Michigan, and they lose outright, 34-30. And then they come back last week and get beat by James Madison. No sin in getting beat by James Madison, but again, I don't know that they're the team they were cracked up to be to start the season. I could be wrong. And then UL Monroe. I mean, I don't know if it's an Appalachian State letdown or what it was, or maybe it was the week off. We had this game in this segment last week where I had said, maybe Terry Bowden put a couple of new things in the off week. Usually coaches do that during bye weeks. But boy, oh boy, 42-41 or 41-40, whatever it was, Appalachian barely gets by. So I don't know if that's an indicator that UL Monroe is good or that they needed the bye week to get some things straight. And I don't know that South Alabama is as bad as what the results are showing. It just leads me to a big red X. Cross the game off. Wait and see what happens here. Maybe we can come back next week with some new thoughts.
Rob, we got a question here from 99 about your thoughts on tonight's action. Just quickly, Liberty hosting Sam Houston State, a big number, -21, and Western Kentucky at Louisiana Tech, 58.5. Hilltoppers -6. Did you want to touch on anything quickly or not much?
I'll talk directly to Jason here because he's been a good client for a long time. I'll say this directly to him. I don't want to put us through this Austin Reed fiasco again tonight, so I have no play on that game. A couple of weeks in a row, Drew, and I talked about it earlier, banging my head against a brick wall. It just, Western Kentucky plays with such tempo, and they have such ability on offense. But again, like I just mentioned about Troy, Western Kentucky is probably a better example of a team that just shoots themselves in the foot offensively week after week. I thought I could get there with the over tonight in that particular game. I can't, because I just can't trust Western Kentucky to be the point-producing team that they've been in the past. So I'll pass on that one. We know that I'm pretty sure Bachmeier will not play for Louisiana Tech again tonight. And Louisiana Tech's been halfway decent on the defensive side of the football. So no thoughts side or total there I laid off. And then, of course, the Tez Walker deal was huge, right? I mean, boy, UNC thought they'd have him from the beginning of the season. I think the NCAA may have just caved to pressure here. The decision that they made was ridiculous to begin with. And the fact that the kid was going to have to sit all season long and maybe get a chance to play in a bowl game at the end was totally outrageous. So now he's active as of this coming Saturday. And boy, oh boy, why don't we just give Drake May another weapon that's probably, not even probably, he will be their best receiving weapon on the field. So look out ACC, because this offense should be coming now in the weeks ahead.
Rob, next game up. Thanks for the question, 99. We get Arkansas and Mississippi, a little SEC West battle here. 63.5 being the total, -11 in the hook. That's hotty toddy in Oxford, Mississippi.
What a huge win for Lane Kiffin last week, right? I mean, 55-49 against LSU. And I think they were trailing like 49-40 in the fourth and came back. But they've been sporadic. I mean, the fact that Judkins couldn't run an inch for so many games this year, and then last week they run it really, really well. Again, sometimes it takes a few weeks for things to get figured out, for things to get ironed out, for things to start clicking and become cohesive. And maybe that's all it was with Ole Miss, because they should have been running like that. Their ground game should have been like that from the start of the season. It hasn't been, but if we take last week, I would have to say the total will indicate to anybody who looks at the total here that it should be a track meet. KJ Jefferson, always capable with Arkansas. They don't have the weapons that Ole Miss has. Neither team has a good enough defense to stop the other, but Ole Miss is probably the team that can make one extra stop. I think there's a lot of fight in Sam Pittman's team, Drew. It showed up last week. I know they lose 34-22, but 14 of A&M's points are off turnovers and a special teams punt return for touchdowns. So I'd be willing to look at Arkansas as the underdog here in a game where, like I say, Ole Miss had to exert every ounce of energy they had to beat LSU. It was a huge win. I don't know if they come back and blow this team out. So I'd probably look at Arkansas from a side perspective here.
Staying in the state of Mississippi here, going from Oxford down to Starkville with Western Michigan at Mississippi State. Rob, this is a 12 noon Eastern kick. Minus 20 in the hook. That's Mississippi State at home. 56 being the total. A little MAC versus SEC here.
Yeah, it's so difficult to lay it here with Mississippi State, Drew, but I will say this. If they want to make a bowl game, you got to win this game. I mean, the sense of urgency starts now for MSU because it's not going to get any easier where conference play is concerned. And if you just look down their remaining schedule, you'll see Southern Miss, probably another team they can handle. But if they were to win this and win that, that's only 4 wins. And somewhere along the line, you have to beat 2 of Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, A&M, or Ole Miss. It's just not going to be easy for them. But I do think they can handle this team. I think Western Michigan probably looking more at the MAC, which we'll be able to have our MACtion back fairly soon here, Drew. And once the MAC season starts, all you have to do is win a division and you wind up in the MAC title game. So I think their sights are probably set on that. But 20.5 is just too large of a number to me for a Mississippi State team that isn't the defensive team they have been in the past. I would say this. I do think this game could probably get over the total. I think Will Rogers and company, the fact that they can run the ball really well this year with Jaquavius Marks, which balances off the passing game, I think they should do good things offensively in this game. Western Michigan probably gets theirs. It's got to be a sense of urgency here out of Mississippi State. I'm just not willing to lay 3 touchdowns with them. I think I'd rather look at over than anything in that game.
Rob, you bring up MACtion coming up, I guess another month or so away. One thing I was thinking about is Conference USA just last night started playing Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for the rest of the month of October. And I know you love the small conferences. I was thinking it myself. We get, I think the stat is 50 straight games of football, including NFL and college football. I mean, isn't that a great marketing decision by Conference USA to step up and do this and be primetime games instead of going Saturday at 3:00 and nobody's really watching your game because there's so many other big games? Do you like that from a business standpoint?
Oh, I think it's a great move, right? It's a great move because you get to, when they're isolated games like that, people get to know your top players. How many people, honestly, Drew, I mean, we're involved in this every single day. But honestly, how many people knew that Jacksonville State's head coach was Rich Rodriguez and tune in last night and see him on the sidelines and see that team play? So, yeah, it's fantastic for the presence of the league and to have 2 new teams in there. They'll get to see Sam Houston State tonight, who's a new team from FCS, as well as Jacksonville State in that league. And the other schools that have been there for a while, UTEP, Louisiana Tech, so on and so forth, get their coverage as well. So I'm a college football junkie, so I love it, but I think it's great for the overall nation to be able to tune in and see some of these teams and some of these players.
Yeah, it's such a smart move. And you bring up the fact of, knowing Rich Rodriguez, me and you knew that. And to tell you the truth, probably a good amount of the listeners of Every Game on the Board, I don't know about all, but a portion. But you're right. The normal sports fan probably wouldn't have known that. That's just, opening up his betting app and being oh, Jacksonville State's playing tonight. Maybe I'll take the points with them. That guy's probably not going to know stuff like that. So it's cool to see it coming out. I just thought it was a great move by Conference USA. We get 3:30 here, Rob. This is a big one. Heading to the SEC. And I'll tell you, I'm kicking myself right now, Rob. Alabama, Texas A&M. It was 3. Alabama laying 3. At some point, it moved to 1. I missed it. And I was like, you know what? When this came out, Texas A&M obviously has their quarterback injury. Wegman out. I think he's out for the year. But their backup came in, the lefty. I think it's Brad Johnson's son. And he looked great. I mean, against Auburn, he came in. I almost thought he did better, as the backup quarterback coming in. He rolled it over again. I'm like, man, I'm looking to bet on Texas A&M. It almost reminded me of lightning in a bottle when Johnny Manziel came in. It's not the same type of player, but when Texas A&M got him that time, I thought it was setting up for that. And I'm like, man, I'm going to sleep on it. And then sure enough, I missed the number. 45.5 being the total. What's your thoughts here? Alabama, Texas A&M.
I think it's so funny you say that, Drew, because I had this game kind of has the feel. One of the thoughts that crossed my mind Monday morning was it feels like A&M Alabama when Manziel was there. I think A&M's got a tremendous shot in this ball game. And again, you have the little Saban Jimbo feud, which they kind of, patted each other on the back late last year. But I'm sure Jimbo does not forget a single word of what Nick Saban said about how he gets his players last year. So the talent gap seems to have been closed, right? Alabama no longer looks dominant, at least on the offensive side of the football. They're great defensively. And A&M looks to be a little bit better. You talked about the point spread move. Let's talk about the total move here, too, because, boy, people have come in droves, or money has come in droves on the under, opened at 50. You and I did a show together. I think yesterday it was 47. As soon as we ended the show, it was down to 46.5. I do like under in this game, but you can't increasingly lose key numbers the way this total is losing them. You've lost 49. You've lost 48.5, 48, 47.5, 47, all scores where games will land. The next key number is 45, so you're still above that. If you think it's 24, 21 or less, then you've still got wiggle room. I happen to think that it probably is. Let's go over just a couple of things here real quick from last week. Drew, Alabama plays Mississippi State. They score 40 points. Only 20 scored by the offense. The rest are defensive points. And they had TD drives. They had 3 TD drives, or 3 scoring drives. I shouldn't even say touchdown because 2 were field goals. But 3 of their drives started inside the Mississippi State 35-yard line due to turnovers. And they only gained 53 total yards on those 3 drives and wound up with 13 points. So it's not like Jalen Milroe and company. You see 40 points, and at surface value, you think, wow, Alabama's figured it out. But really, I'm not sure that they figured it out. And again, I mentioned earlier, Mississippi State's not exactly the defense they've been in the past. A&M's defense is very, very good. Let's look at A&M real quick here. Last week, they scored 34, but 14. An interception return and a punt return. So they only scored 20 with Max Johnson. I think these 2 defenses are both at advantages here against these offenses. I think both coaches will probably play this at a slow tempo, try and play kind of what we consider the Bill Belichick style, right? Let's play field position and wait for a mistake. Both teams are capable of forcing one. It'll be up to Max Johnson and Jalen Milroe to protect the football. Certainly they'll be coached very well in that category here. I see a low-scoring slugfest here, Drew. I think, again, if you're looking at 46.5, I think you can probably still get there. I think you probably find somewhere between 41 and 45 when this game's all said and done.
Yeah, great game coming up. I mean, SEC West kind of champion. It could be, this could go a long way towards that. Who's going to represent the division in Atlanta? Huge shout out to the chat box. We got Steven in the house saying, sorry about my Marlins. Thanks, Steven. Yeah, I was rocking the Marlins hat yesterday with the thought it might be the last day I can for a while. But, hey, it was a good run for the Fish. I appreciate the shout out, buddy. We got William in the house. Every game on the board, the best with the greatest cappers. Rob Veno, fan favorite here, guys. I know you guys love him. Please smash that like button, comment below on Twitter as well at Rob Veno Sports. And William asking about thoughts on Toledo UMass. William, I hit that in Jeff Nadeau he had a family emergency, so I did part number 1 actually solo and talked about it. But I will ask Robbie about it before we get out of here. So thanks for the comment as well. So we go from Alabama, Texas A&M. This is the beauty of the every game on the board to UConn and Rice. We get Rice minus 9.5, 47.5 being the total. I'll tell you, Rob, this Rice team's actually pretty good. I watched them. It's not only their quarterback. They got some good defensive linemen. They got some boys up front. I don't know what's going on there. I think their coach came from Stanford back when Stanford was really good, kind of using that mentality, and it's starting to work. UConn, I don't know. I don't know if they're kind of decent, riding under the radar. They haven't looked all that great this season. It would be lay the points with Rice for me. But what do you think? What are you thinking with the Huskies and Owls?
It's so funny, Drew. Like you say, we talk about every game on the board here, and I was doing a wager talk show with Kelly in Vegas. She was hosting a couple of weeks back, and she's like, Rob, here's a game I thought I'd never be talking about this week. South Florida gets Rice a couple of weeks back. And I said to her at the time, I said, Kelly, you know what? You're part of that every game on the board broadcast. And Drew and I have been talking about these CUSA Sunbelt games for 10 years. And we'll find gems in these games. I don't know that we're going to find a gem here, Drew, but Rice with JT Daniels is a different breed offensively. Now, you can halfway trust them to score enough points to cover a number like this, right? 9.5. You're going to have to score to cover 9.5. Whether or not they can, I think is still up in the air. The jury's out on this team. Some weeks they're capable, some weeks they're not. I mean, last week, what was it? It was like 24-17 or something over ECU. ECU might be a shade better than Connecticut, but Connecticut gave Utah State all they could handle last week. I would chalk some of that up to the fact that Utah State is not used to that type of travel, right? We're going to travel from Logan, Utah, wherever it's located, all the way to Storrs, Connecticut. That's just not a road trip that generally you make if you're Utah State. So they slept, walked early, came on late. I'm with you. A lot was expected of Jim Moore and this team, Jim Moore Jr., and this team after last year's performance when they got to a bowl game. It hasn't happened. I don't know that it'll happen here. I kind of like Rice because I like the fact that Daniels can, they have quick strike capability. Let's put it that way offensively. And the head coach you talked about, Mike Bloomgren, give him credit because at Stanford, they were one of those 60-40 run type teams. He actually worked there under Jim Harbaugh, I think, for a period of time. Ground and pound. But he's let this team open it up a little bit. I kind of like him. I would say Rice or nothing for me. Connecticut on the road. Talk about road trips you don't generally make to Houston, Texas. I'm not sure that bodes well for UConn either. So I think I would be looking Rice here. And again, we were talking earlier, it's not too early for guys to start factoring in, not major factor, but start factoring in chances at bowl games. For Rice, bowl games are so huge. And so the sense of urgency to win games increases. You have to win a game like this. So I would say Rice or nothing in that contest.
Like it, Rob. You bring up Logan, Utah to Storrs, Connecticut. Actually, you can speak more to Storrs, Connecticut. I've never been there, but I've heard it's kind of in a different area. But to go from Logan, Utah to there, I know it's not one flight. Definitely not. And there's a bus ride involved from Logan, Utah. So I'm going to take the over on like a 8-hour trip, like door to door. I don't know. Do you have any more insight to that?
Yeah, Storrs is not easy to get to. Storrs is like a cow pasture basically out there. And how Gino Auriemma and how Jim Calhoun ever got those basketball programs by recruiting kids to Storrs is beyond me, but they did it. So it's not the easiest place to get into. It is a flight and a bus ride. Obviously, I think you could fly into Hartford and then go from Hartford to Storrs. But I've been there. It's not highly populated. It's not city territory, believe me. So it's a long flight, a long trip.
Okay. And we got Old Dominion and Southern Miss up next. 57.5 being the total, -1 in the hook. That's Southern Miss in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Okay, ODU. So we don't know what to expect point-wise week to week out of Old Dominion. We know they go fast. Ricky Ronnie's team has picked up the tempo this year. But from week to week, their point totals are all over the place. Last week, when it looked like they were an offense that couldn't execute well enough to finish off drives, they come up with 30-plus points last week in a game where they played against a pretty good defense. So now they got me thinking, again, we're in week 6 here. Maybe some of these teams are getting it together. And for ODU, this is a system switch as far as tempo is concerned. So it would make sense that maybe in the beginning it didn't run as smooth as maybe it'll run the end of the year. So you got to put a little check mark next to ODU, their offensive point production possibilities. And this is a defense that they can get theirs against. Southern Miss has given it up to a lot of teams so far this year, including last week. However, I'll say this in defense of Southern Miss. This is a step down in class. they've played some difficult games. And to be playing ODU's defense now, I think Southern Miss will be able to move the football as well. I was a little surprised they bet this game down from 58. This is off the top of my head, Drew. I think it was 58.5, and now we're staring at 57.5. I could pull up the Wager Talk odds screen to be exact, but I think it's about there. And again, there's going to be a lot of possessions in this game, a lot of possessions, and probably a lot of points. I would scratch the side here, because whichever side you bet is probably going to aggravate you at the end of this game. But if you bet total, I think you want to be looking at over.
Guys, we got 3 games left to hit every game on the Week 6 board with at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. Just 3 games left, taking some time on his birthday, delaying the happy hour with his birthday celebration. So give him some credit in the comments below, and please smash that like button, guys. We got South Florida, UAB up next. We're seeing the Bulls -3 in the hook as the road favorite, 68.5 being the total. USF versus UAB, Robbie.
Did you see the animation out of Trent Dilfer last week? Dear Lord. 12 men on the field on his defense. He attacks his defensive coordinator. Looked like he was going to punch him. Then he's throwing tablets around. Kind of crazy, Trent Dilfer. Relax, dude. I wasn't relaxed because I had over 58.5 in that game, and that game landed 58 with a fumble as the guy's crossing the end zone for a touchdown, and a fumble on 1st and goal at the 3-yard line. So 14 points that, even if you get 6 out of it, you cover it. If you get 3 out of it, you cover that number. Didn't quite get there. These are 2 of the top 10 fastest teams in the nation right now as far as play calling is concerned. Again, Alex Golish, the head coach at South Florida. You got to remember where he came from, and he came from Josh Heupel's system at Central Florida, Josh Heupel's system at Tennessee. He's doing the same thing here. They're run heavy. They don't throw it really well, but their receivers, generally speaking, Drew, when I look, their receivers are wide open because nobody's even looking to play the pass against this team. So they make some big plays. And UAB, honestly, last week against Tulane, they physically matched up very, very well. They ran the football. They would just line up and run the football at Tulane, which you don't think they would be able to do, but they did it. A lot of respect for Alabama Birmingham's offense at this point in time. The total's gotten so out of control, though, right? I talked last week about how we were still taking advantage of totals that were hung too low. Like, people didn't understand what these teams had converted to and how well they were playing offensively. And we cashed a lot of tickets early on. Now I'm staring at 69.5, 70. That's getting out of range. It's not that it can't go over. It's not that this can't be a 38-35 game. But now you have to have everything go your way to get it there. Again, for those that are going to bet it, it's going to be a fast-paced game. Both of these teams can move the football. I think UAB is the better team, though. But South Florida's got some weapons, too. I mean, that team's pretty fast. I would say if you're not going to play, maybe you can break it down the first half total and maybe play that over. But I haven't even gotten to the window for full game total myself, and I'm a big proponent of both of these offenses right now.
Rob Veno breaking it down every game on the board. Shout out to our sponsor, Viva Tequila Seltzer. VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. Our friends at Viva, the ultimate go-to for toasting those winning picks with only 88 calories, 0 carbs, no sugar, 4.5% ABV. Viva, the perfect match for celebrating our victories. We got Michigan and Minnesota up next here, Robbie. Just 2 games left, 7:30 Eastern in the Big Ten, -18. That is the Wolverines as the road favorite, 46 being the total in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and I know, Drew, if there's anybody, any colleague of mine that knows about school rivalries, you know about it. This is some kind of rivalry here in Michigan, Minnesota. I don't know exactly what it is, but I only say that because Minnesota and PJ Fleck, this is a down season for them, but the fact that these are bordering states, the fact that this is some type of rivalry will obviously have Minnesota on the emotional high to play this ball game. They're certainly not good enough to beat Michigan. I mean, let's face it, Michigan's one of the 5 best teams in the country. Minnesota's not one of the 5 best teams in the Big Ten. So there's a talent gap here. Is it worth 3 touchdowns? I don't know that I'm willing to play it to find out. I do think Minnesota is going to come with everything they have here. If they're going to keep this thing close, Drew, and get in under the number, it's going to be because they force some turnovers in this game because they just don't have any offensive capability. You look at their quarterback play this year, and it's just not what it's been the past 3-4 years. And that's the biggest setback for this team is they just can't get anything going from that particular position. Years past, even last year, you could rely on guys like Ibrahim and that offensive line to just pound the ball and shorten the game. You can't even count on them to get first downs and extend drives anymore. So Michigan's the far superior team. I'm just a little bit leery because I know Minnesota is going to bring everything they have emotionally.
Rob, it's the little brown jug. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. How did I not remember that? That's right.
It's
a big game.
Yeah. Little brown jug. What a great rivalry name. And it's been going for, I'm seeing 104 times. The oldest rivalry, if you go by like when it first started, 1892. Little brown jug. Michigan, Minnesota. Guys, we got one game left, and that will be all the games on the Week 6 college football card here with our closer, Rob Veno at Rob Veno Sports. We're going to end it with Texas State and UL Lafayette. We're seeing the Ragin' Cajuns minus 2.5-point home favorite, 68 being the total. Another high total here, Robbie, as we get the Bobcats and the Ragin' Cajuns.
Oh, G.J. Kinney, T.J. Finley, these Texas State Bobcats, this offense is tremendous, Drew. I think I said it last week. My definition of them is they're a home run waiting to happen. Every time they snap the football, somebody could go the distance. It'll keep ULL on their toes defensively. I certainly don't think they can contain them. The biggest question here, and just look at the point spread in this game, Drew. Lafayette 1-point favorite at home against Texas State. I mean, coming from the days of the head coach at Florida, now I'm missing his name again.
Billy Napier?
Yeah, Billy Napier, coming from the Billy Napier days where Lafayette at home was going to be a double-digit favorite almost any time against an opponent like this. Not the case right now. I don't know if UL Lafayette can outscore them, Drew. Honestly, I think Texas State, because they have that SEC-style quarterback play, TJ Finley couldn't cut it at LSU. He couldn't cut it at Auburn. Those defenses are a different breed. They get after him. He'd get nervous. He'd throw it up for grabs, and he'd make mistakes. That hasn't happened here with this team. This is a all-out air raid system. He seems to be thriving in it. Malik Hornsby, ex-Arkansas quarterback, comes in, and they have some running packages in place for him. This is an explosive team, and I wouldn't put it past them to get the outright upset here. Again, it's only 1 point, so you have to win it straight up. But I think Texas State right now, these teams just aren't ready for them and what they have to offer on the offensive side of the football. They're going to have to hold up at the line of scrimmage because Lafayette will run the football straight at them. We'll see. I would take my chances with Texas State.
Rob Veno, Wager Talk's #1 college football handicapper. Guys, go check him out there. He's 16-6 his last 3 weeks here in CFB, so he's really knowing his stuff. Obviously, you're hearing him here on the Every Game on the Board podcast. Let us know you're listening in the comments below. Love all the interaction, guys. Please smash that like button. Remember, vivatequilaseltzer.com. We got Best Bet coming your way from Rob Veno. Robbie, got any best bet for the listeners? Any one of these games you like the most? Another game on the board you want to throw out?
I usually like to choose from the games we discussed, Drew, so I'll do that again. I think we're coming off a winner last week with A&M and Arkansas over the total. We'll stick with a Texas-type theme, and I'll go back to that Texas Tech Baylor game and play that thing over 60.5. I don't know that they bet it high enough yet. It was probably set too low. But coaches don't just say stuff like Steve Sarkisian said for no reason. And
Uh-oh, guys, I think we've lost Robbie, but we got Texas Tech Baylor 60 flat as the total here.
They get me back?
Okay, we got you back. Yeah. I didn't know if you were just heading out early to the
oh no, Drew's frozen.
Hey. Oh no. Rob, you back with us? Oh boy. Technology, guys. That's the way it goes sometimes. But I think we got you now, Robbie. Now you're moving pretty good. Okay. But 60 we can give you. It is available out there. So up and over with Texas Tech and Baylor. Oh, now we lost him again. Okay, guys. Well, for the sake of good content here and a clean podcast,
I apologize, guys, but hopefully you got the gist of that. Texas Tech Baylor over the total, 60 points here. I think what Steve Sarkisian said has some truth behind it.
Okay, like it, Robbie. Thanks for that. Any final thoughts before you head to the birthday party?
Hey, thanks for watching me for another year here with Drew, everybody that's checking this out. I'm glad to do it for you each and every week. Obviously, we take a lot of pride in this show and love to talk about these games that, you know what, up and down the internet, up and down your television dial, there's not a lot of people that talk about these games the way we'll love to talk about them. So hopefully we're providing a good service to you. Hopefully you cash some tickets.
Absolutely. At Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. Guys, that does it for the Week 6 Every Game on the Board podcast. I am Drew Martin, wherever you're downloading your podcasts at. Every Game on the Boards, where you can find us on YouTube as well, Every Game on the Board, and Facebook as well. We go live, and on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports, at Drew Martin Betts. So, guys, that's going to do it. Shout out to everybody chiming in live. Steven, William, J-Bleed 99 as well. Smash that like button, guys. Cash those tickets. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk next week.